Hi, thanks for joining me today in another episode of Lawson Woods PNW. I'm Lawrence, the host. Hi, welcome again to another episode of Lawson Woods PNW. I'm Lawrence, the host. We're now into the beautiful spring weather and month of March of 2025. And that's something pretty exciting for me here. I've been now in my second tiny house here, the beautiful Seahorse Inn, for 5 years. And that's a pretty exciting accomplishment. Just thought I'd bring a little touch of insight as to how I feel about things after living in this tiny house for 5 years. And if you've seen my videos along the way, you know that things have not been always perfect, but that's okay. There's been some trials and tribulations. There's been some leaks, water leaks. There's been some electricity issues. There's been all sorts of fun stuff to deal with. But it is home, and it's my constant, and I'm very blessed and very thankful to still be here and enjoying my space. So I thought I'd give you a little tour today, walk around the property, a little bit of drone footage as well. Finally got a new drone again. Okay, so what are some things I would do different now that I've been in the tiny house for 5 years? Do I have any regrets? Um, let's see. What would I do different? Well, I think I brought this up before in other videos, but just in case you haven't seen those videos, ultimately what I'd like to do is bring the bedroom downstairs. I don't know when I'll do that or if I'll actually do that, because that would mean restructuring basically the entire thing. Part of my plan and thinking is to remove the bathroom area that's in the back corner there and combine it into the kitchen. A lot of tiny houses have like a galley kitchen set up, and then on the opposite side is where they have their restroom facilities. So that's something I'm thinking about and considering. As I'm getting older each year, sometimes it can be challenging getting up and down the stairs in the middle of the night. And while I still can do it, and don't see any issues in the near future, I do show down the way. I can see that I may have troubles with that. So, what do I feel about living tiny house lifestyle now, full time? And since I've been doing it actually over 6 years now, but in this tiny house 5 years. Well, I still love it. I As soon as I pull up the drive after work or running errands, I see my little house and it just gives me joy. And so, and pride, a little bit of pride. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially when you're an apartment renter your whole life. To finally be able to come home to something that you cherish, that's a huge deal. So I feel pretty accomplished about that, and very blessed, very much blessed that I have this home. So yeah, so there's that. The fact that it's mine, that it's paid for, that I don't have to feel threats of eviction or anything like that anymore. Um, Very, very satisfying. Some other things I've learned about myself living in a tiny house. Well, I've learned that I can do just about anything I put my mind to with a little help from YouTube. When I first got the tiny house, I did not know anything about plumbing. I knew very little about electricity. I knew very little about building. I knew very little bit about anything to do with home repairs. So I've gained a wealth of knowledge over the years, because the fact is, I want to be able to repair it myself if I can, to avoid spending money on, you know, contractors, for instance. Now, there are times where I've had to hire people to come in and help. For instance, I have had a couple of leaks before that I couldn't resolve, and I did have to hire a plumber. I've also had to hire an electrician before. But there are many things that I was able to do myself. So that's pretty exciting. The skills that I've learned along the way are going to help me throughout the rest of my life. And, that's something you can't necessarily pay for, life experiences. So yeah, I feel really good about that. So there's that. Is there anything I would do different? Do I still enjoy living in the tiny house? Questions like that come up every now and then. And I would say, no, there's not much I would do different as of right now. I did talk about the possibility down the road to change the layout, but that's not something that's in my immediate future. I probably will leave things quite the way they are for now because they're working. And until I get to a point that I need to make those changes or consider those, that I'm not going to change much inside internally in the tiny house. So yeah, I feel pretty good about that. What do I still enjoy living in the tiny house after 5 years? Well, I'll be real with you. Sometimes living in the tiny house cannot feel like enough room when you've got two dogs and you got people visiting, and so it can feel compact at times. But being that it is my home, and normally I'm the only one in here with just a couple of dogs, it's more than enough space at that time. I have bought another cabin, and the tiny house cabin chalet, which you've probably seen the videos. I haven't been posting much about the cabin lately because we're kind of in a holding pattern as I continue to try to get the development of the well put in. And part of that process is actually plumbing the well house as a part of the tiny house chalet cabin, and then running the power out there as well. So there's a lot of working details that are happening right now behind the scenes. So I haven't really done much with that, but once I do get that part of it completed, and in the meantime, I'm using it as guest quarters. So it is nice when I do have friends or family come and visit, there's a place for them to stay now. And I've been able to use that a couple of times with some friends. So that's pretty exciting. I also have a lot more storage now than I used to. So, so some people choose to get like a little shed or another outbuilding, for instance, to give you more room in your tiny space. So, if that's an option for you, it can free up more space. Since I've had that, um, and I think I've had the other cabin for just about a year now, it's really helped a lot because it's opened up the space here in the tiny house. I put all of my storage stuff nice and put away into the tiny house chalet cabin. So that's made a world of difference in here. All right, so now we'll talk about the tiny house itself, structurally, how it's holding up after 5 years of living in it full time. So, how is it holding up? Well, pretty good. For the most part, everything has been functioning very well since the early on repairs have been made. Knock on wood. This was the first winter, I should say, that we made it through all winter. And we were talking very cold temperatures at times, down into the 20s and even high teens. And this was the first year that the pipes did not freeze, so I had water throughout the entire season. Wow, that was a huge win because year after year the pipes would inevitably freeze, and yeah, that was not fun to deal with. So, how did I mitigate that? How did I avoid the pipes from freezing? Well, a lot of different things. I did some heat tape around the plumbing of the water coming into the house, which I'd had that previous years, but then I'd also skirted the tiny house to prevent wind flow from coming underneath the tiny house and thus cooling the whole structure, basically. Part of that, I also put in some styrofoam underneath the backing of the skirting. That's really improved it quite a lot, too. So, for me, that was a big win to not have my pipes freeze. I finally felt like, okay, we've got this. So that was huge. All right, so some other things would be, how is it holding up beyond that? Well, the tiny house, even though I've lived in it 5 years, it was actually started to be built back in 2016. It sat in a farmer's field for 3 years before I purchased it, and completed the finishing build and touches to it. So technically, it's 9 years old. But as far as somebody living in it full time, it's only been 5 years. That being said, honestly, everything is holding up very well, with the exception of one detail. the floor itself. So they used, the people that built the house used, I forget what it's called, but basically it's almost like laminate flooring. It looks like real wood, but it's not. They come in little planks that come together. And because of the massive amount of rain we get throughout the winter and throughout the rest of the year, some of that flooring is kind of not looking so great anymore. And so, one thing I am considering doing this summer is taking out the flooring and putting in actual wood floors. That way, they'll be more durable, as well as I can treat them. And worst case scenario, if they get dinged up too bad or marked up too bad, I can always sand the wood floors and restain them. So that's something I'm considering. But other than that, the rest of the structure has been holding up very well. There's always stuff that you have to do to maintain. There's always going to be painting that needs to be done. There's going to be, potential, caulking around windows and doors, for instance, that some of it wasn't completed, so I had to do some of that too. But there's always upkeep. But keep in mind, this tiny house is a stick-built tiny house, very similar in building methods that you would do in a traditional tiny house. So I do see that this tiny house can last and probably outlast me, being somebody near 50. So I'm pretty sure that this tiny house can have a longevity long past my time here on this beautiful planet. So, yeah. So I'm pretty sure that the tiny house is here to stay, and the tiny house lifestyle is here to stay. And again, I'm very thankful. I'm not giving up. We're going to keep the fight going, and I hope you do the same. If this video has been helpful to you, I sure hope that you like, share, comment, and subscribe, and keep up to date. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram at Lawson Woods. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you have a blessed day.